At Compass Pathways, we're a company in the final stages of developing synthetic psilocybin as a potential treatment for treatment-resistant depression, or what we call patients living with persistent depression. That's a big problem affecting some 3 million people in the US, and it's debilitating. Many of them are unable to work. The majority will have had some sort of suicidal thoughts in the course of their depressive illness. So we're a leading psychedelic company and potentially the closest to regulatory approval.
You've used the word potential twice. You said it's a potential treatment, and you said potentially you're a leading company there when it comes to FDA approval. Is it unproven?
We have generated robust evidence now from 2 studies. The first was published a couple of years ago, and then just last month, we released more data from the first of our final stage studies. So what can I tell you about that? First, safety. We didn't see any unexpected safety signals in this treatment of patients living with persistent depression. And secondly, after just a single treatment, after 6 weeks, we saw a significant reduction in depressive symptoms. And just to emphasize that, because you'll be aware of the typical paradigm of antidepressants, something you take daily. This was a single treatment and with the effect measured after 6 weeks. Now, we already are 2 for 2 in terms of these trials, clinical trials that we've conducted, but we're continuing to see more evidence generated first in one of these late stage trials. And second, we have another study ongoing where we're also looking at the impact potentially of another treatment.
We should point out that about a month ago when that study came out, the stock, your shares tumbled almost 50%, hitting a record low. What I guess I want to understand, so it was below what Wall Street expected. It did meet your goal, from what I understand, your company goal, but Wall Street was very disappointed. Tell us how this works. How does one psilocybin treatment kind of cure depression, persistent depression?
Psilocybin you can think of as, if you like, a key that unlocks a door or a set of doors in the brain. And while those doors are open, that enables the patient to work through some of their fixed negative thinking and potentially have relief from their depressive symptoms. To do that, there is a profound subjective experience. So there is a psychedelic experience that lasts 6 to 8 hours. And as I say, during the course of that, the drug is working in such a way that it unlocks these doors and allows the patient to engage with some of those negative thoughts and potentially, as I say, get relief from those depressive symptoms. The fact is, as I say, we've seen, and what's amazing, that one single treatment can show sustained effects at least 3 to 6 weeks and potentially longer. In our earlier trial, our earlier clinical study that we did, we saw that for many patients that was sustained out to 12 weeks.
What's many? How many? Forgive me, Tim. I'm just curious, how many?
So that was a study of around 230 patients, of whom a significant number were on what we call the active dose of the medication. And what we saw was a quarter of them had, from that single dose, they were actually sustained free of depression out to 12 weeks. And in this population of people who have typically tried multiple treatments and for whom very little is any longer working, that was a remarkable response.
When patients do take this single dose, what is the environment that they're in during that 6 to 8 hours? And are they guided in some way by a therapist of sorts?
Physically, it's a calm, comfortable setting. They have the option of eye shades, there's music playing, and there are appropriate safety safeguards in place. Psilocybin is a very inner-directed mechanism. So what actually happens is the patient has this profound influence, but while there is somebody in the room, it's largely silent. There is not directed therapy in the course of that intervention.
How do you run an effective clinical trial for a drug that the experience is such that the person knows they've taken this drug rather than a placebo? Somebody who takes a placebo is not going to have a psychedelic reaction to the placebo.
At Compass, we thought about this before we even started our studies. So our prior big study, the one I referenced with 230 patients, we designed that in such a way that there was the choice of 3 different doses of psilocybin. One was a low dose, a second was an intermediate dose, and in patients who've never had this experience before, that's truly confounding. in terms of they cannot tell whether they got a medium dose or a high dose of that drug. This is important because, as you say, otherwise it will be very obvious. But that design was very effective for that earlier stage study we did, and we've replicated that design in one of our late stage studies.
We're talking with Kabir Nath. He's Chief Executive Officer of Compass Pathways here in studio. You keep saying synthetic. What's the difference between synthetic and naturally occurring?
So we are manufacturing a pill to the highest standards of purity, no contamination. We know exactly what is in the pill. This is a manufactured pill that we are treating with.
So that you know exactly in terms of dosage. Is that what I'm saying? So if naturally occurring is different?
Potentially. Okay. It is naturally occurring. Whereas ours is synthetic, so we know exactly what's in it. We know the exact pill.
What will it cost?
It's premature to speculate on that at the moment. We're still conducting these final stages of our studies.
But expensive? And would it be something, I mean, if you get FDA approval, is it safe to make the assumption that it would be covered?
The whole premise for founding Compass Pathways was to enable that form of broad access. So the reason that the company has gone through doing these rigorous, robust clinical studies so that we can discuss that with the FDA, potential for regulatory approval, and then, if we're fortunate enough to get there, the chance to negotiate with both commercial insurers and government payers. Let's remind ourselves that these 3 million people that I referred to, they are relying on insurers, commercial insurers and government payers to actually cover their drugs. I believe we will be able to demonstrate significant value given how different this is from other treatments available today in depression.
Kabir, Carol mentioned that the Associated Press reported earlier this month that RFK Jr. recently talked to members of Congress about psychedelic therapy for depression and trauma. Apart from that, have you seen any real signs of support for the administration for this new class of drugs or type of treatment?
We have had support from the FDA throughout our development process. We have breakthrough designation.
So even before Robert F. Kennedy Jr. took over as HHS?
We have had a motivated and engaged agency. We're excited to see the voices from HHS, from Veterans Affairs today, suggesting that they also see the potential for this class. And we're very happy to work to see how we could potentially accelerate access, while at the same time ensuring that we continue to generate really good, robust, good evidence that these are safe and effective.
Talk to us about timeline, though. I feel like I know Bloomberg's been reporting on this class of drugs and treatments, and I think we've all seen pieces
for years. Right,
for a long time, that for people where other treatments don't seem to be making a change for them. So I don't know, is it another few years? Is it the end of this year? Is it the end of next year? And is it, that the Trump administration could somehow shuttle this through much more quickly?
I think there are clearly people in the current administration who, as I say, see the potential of this, but we want to make sure we do this right as well. So we want to make sure we do that in the right way with the right rigor and so on. We are conducting, as I say, the final stages of studies. We have 2 ongoing, of which the second will wrap up in the second half of next year. The data we released last month, though it hasn't yet been reviewed by the FDA, we have a meeting planned with them where we'll discuss with them, and we'll discuss the potential for any acceleration of a filing and a regulatory process.
Do you also think about other usages, whether it's PTSD and other applications? And I'm just curious what you might be exploring in that world.
Our next priority beyond persistent depression is indeed PTSD. That is something with very high prevalence, some 13 million in the US, for which there are only 2 very old drugs approved. And unfortunately, recently, there have been 2 advisory committees recommending against new drugs in that space. So yes, we see PTSD as a key area. We generated some data last year, and we will be announcing the design of another late-stage trial for PTSD imminently.
I know the US FDA is the gold standard for going through the regulatory process to be viewed by the world as a credible treatment for something. But these days, is it worth going after approval in another country to try to do this on a smaller scale to prove that, yes, it indeed works?
We will be exploring approval in a range of countries. So our studies have been international, US, Canada, Europe as well. We have taken advice over the years from the European regulatory authorities. We're a UK-based company as well, so we've been speaking to the MHRA, the regulatory authority in the UK. So yes, this is a problem, sadly, for patients across the world, and we would look to exploit it where we can.
Kabir, just got about 30, 40 seconds. We're actually going to be talking with the CEO of AstraZeneca right after this. I'm just curious, in terms of big pharma, have you had any preliminary discussions with larger pharmaceutical partners interested in commercialization, co-commercialization, or distribution?
What I know is the big pharma is tracking this space closely. And what's been great is to see the re-entry of some big pharma back into psychiatry over the last couple of years. So I know they watch this space, but we at Compass are determined that we can do this ourselves and are excited about the opportunity to bring this potential new treatment to patients who so clearly need it.
So no strategic alignment that you would consider. You plan on doing this alone?
That's our plan.